A recent report compiled at the request of the UN Secretary General warns of a pandemic that could be caused by a virus that would sweep across the planet, causing more than 80 million casualties worldwide and wiping out 5% of the global economy. We've all seen the scary movies about some doomsday virus that causes the end of the world. And right now, there is a deadly coronavirus rapidly spreading around the globe. Could one of these deadly viruses end up wiping out millions of people? The name of this virus alone strikes fear into those who know exactly what it's capable of doing to the body once a victim is infected. There are 6 known species of the Ebola virus, and 4 of them cause a type of hemorrhagic fever in humans with a very high fatality rate. It was first discovered in 1976 near the Ebola River in what's now the Dominican Republic of Congo. Out of 318 people who contracted the virus, only 30 survived, which comes out to be an 88% fatality rate. Since then, the virus has emerged periodically and infected people in several African countries, with fatality rates as high as 90%. It has been called the scariest virus, and despite what you have seen in films and movies, the reality is far worse than any writer could have dreamt up. What Ebola does to the body defies reason and is like something right out of a horror movie. Early symptoms of Ebola are flu-like with a runny nose and chills. But the virus is just getting started and begins to cause white blood cells to rupture and prevent blood from clotting. In the final stage, a victim's eyes turn red and their genitals swell. They will be covered in a rash of purple spots on the skin caused by the internal bleeding of small blood vessels, and they will appear bruised all over their bodies. Sufferers will also bleed from every orifice in their body, and low blood pressure is what the victim will finally succumb to. Most people who have this disease, and even those who somehow survive it, are treated like real-life zombies. Many people are familiar with the rabies virus. It is a viral disease that affects the central nervous system of any warm-blooded animal that it can infect. And like most deadly viruses, there is no cure for the rabies. It is almost always fatal to the animal. The most common carrier of rabies are raccoons, bats, skunks, and foxes. The scary thing is that it is hard to tell if an animal is sick with rabies or not, because the only sure way to test for the disease is by examination of the brain tissue of the dead animal. A person is just given a vaccine if there's a chance he's been infected. The virus is spread by the saliva of the infected animal, and transmission is usually through a bite wound. Once it has been determined that the animal has rabies, the infected animal usually dies within 5 days. The final stage of rabies involves paralysis of the nerves that control the head and throat. The victim will hypersalivate and lose the ability to swallow. As the paralysis continues, respiratory failure hits, and eventually the victim dies. Human rabies cases in the United States are very rare, with maybe 2 cases reported per year. Luckily, there is a vaccine and antibodies for humans, and if you are bitten, you can be treated. However, if you don't get treatment after being bitten by an animal with rabies, there is a 100% possibility that it will be fatal. Once a victim starts to show the symptoms of the disease, in most cases, it is too late. Back in 1967, a group of lab workers in Germany contracted a new type of hemorrhagic fever from some African green monkeys that had been imported for research and development of polio vaccines. It's called the Marburg virus, also known as Marburg hemorrhagic fever, and is in the same biosafety category as Ebola. It has a 23 to 90% fatality rate and can be easily spread through close human contact. Symptoms start with a headache, fever, rash on the abdomen, and progresses quickly to multiple organ failure and massive internal bleeding. There is no cure for this disease, and the latest cases reported were as recent as 2012 in Uganda. The leading cause of fatalities in the tropics and subtropics is the infection that is brought on by the dengue virus, a mosquito-borne disease that causes a high fever, severe headache, and in the worst cases, hemorrhaging. There is no vaccine, and it can be easily contracted from the bite of an infected mosquito, which, by the way, is considered the most dangerous animal to humans in the world. The CDC estimates that each year there are 390 million cases of dengue fever, and the global incidence of the virus has grown dramatically in recent decades, putting almost half of the world's population at risk. Although this virus is mostly found in subtropical climates, even rural areas in some countries are starting to become affected. Severe dengue is now the leading cause of serious illness and fatalities among children and adults in some Asian and Latin American countries. Some good advice would be to carry a lot of bug spray when visiting any of these regions. Everyone has heard of smallpox. It ranks among the most devastating illnesses ever suffered by humans. There were around 300 million fatalities worldwide in the 20th century before the virus was completely eradicated in 1977. It is said that it dramatically altered the course of human history and contributed to the decline of entire civilizations, such as the Aztec Empire, with more than 3 million Aztecs succumbing to the disease. It also claimed the life of an Inca emperor and wiped out much of the Inca population. However, smallpox is not a virus, but the contagious disease caused by the variola or spotted virus. Historically, it was fatal to 30% of the people who contracted it, and those who survived it were often left blind, sterile, and have deep pitted scars or pockmarks on the skin. It was easily spread through the direct contact with infected people, body fluids, or contaminated objects. Despite eradication, there is still a chance this disease could come back to haunt us as a biological weapon. There is no virus in the world that can claim credit for more worldwide pandemics than influenza. The Spanish flu in 1918 infected 20 to 40% of the world's population, and 50 million people, 5% of the world's population at the time, perished from the virus in just 2 years. And the most recent strain to cause a scare was the swine flu, when, in 2009, it infected at least 89 million people worldwide. Everyone knows the symptoms: fever, chills, cough, sore throat, and all the other nasty things that influenza causes. We do have vaccines and most people survive infections, but this virus is constantly mutating and creating new strains that cause highly infectious respiratory illnesses. Thousands of influenza strains exist. Many of them are harmless, but vaccines in the United States only cover about 40% of those strains. The biggest problem with influenza is that it is so easy to catch, making it very scary if it were ever to become incurable. In December 2019, the USA had at least 3.7 million cases of the flu. 32,000 people were hospitalized, and out of those, 1,800 didn't survive. And it continues to claim lives with 500,000 fatalities annually. Some experts warn that a new mutation could become far more dangerous, and we could see more than 250 million casualties worldwide. Hantavirus has many strains, and it's airborne, and can be carried by rodents such as field or deer mice. The different strains are known to cause different types of illnesses in humans, but most notably hemorrhagic fever and renal syndrome, which is a rare medical syndrome where respiratory failure is caused by bleeding in the lungs along with kidney failure. In 1993, there was an outbreak in the southwestern United States. During this time, it was an unexplained pulmonary illness with alarming cases. A young physically fit man suffering from shortness of breath was rushed to the hospital in New Mexico, where he very quickly succumbed to the disease. This disease has a mortality rate of 1 to 15%, but hantavirus pulmonary syndrome sits at 38% and is hard to discern from the common cold until it is too late. This scary virus still rears its ugly head once in a while, and the US saw its most recent outbreak on Yosemite National Park in late 2012. Until the 21st century, the worst of the coronavirus family could only infect humans with the same symptoms as the common cold. But the new novel coronavirus, such as the Wuhan coronavirus in China, have recently emerged and could cause a deadly global pandemic. It has never been encountered before, and like other coronaviruses, it comes from animals. This virus causes pneumonia, and victims suffer coughs, fever, and it makes it hard to breathe. In the most severe cases, which is 1 out of 4 people infected, the virus will cause organ failure. And because this is viral pneumonia, antibiotics are useless. Antiviral drugs that are used to combat the flu are also of no use. This means that recovery depends on the strength of the infected person's immune system. Currently, there is no antivirus, but scientists in the USA had been studying coronavirus since 2012 and say they may have a cure. The number of people infected by the new strain of coronavirus is nearing 10,000 cases in China, jumping just 2,000 cases in 1 day. This new virus has spread very rapidly, reaching every region in mainland China, causing many casualties so far. But now there are also more than 12,000 cases worldwide, with the outbreak reaching 20 places outside of China, including the United States. All countries have advised against traveling to China, and countries like Russia have banned it altogether. So far, there have been nearly 300 casualties, with many more expected. No one knows what the outcome will be in China. No one knows how far it will spread, and no one knows if there really is a solid cure yet, which many scientists are working on. The World Health Organization is unable to put a mortality rate on the Wuhan coronavirus, currently estimated to be around 2%, but that number is provisional because the only thing WHO knows is how many people have perished from the virus. No one knows how many people were infected. And here's the other thing that makes this virus so dangerous. Researchers found something that shocked them when they discovered that it can be transmitted by people who show no symptoms. It's called asymptomatic transmission, and there is no doubt that it is now occurring. And because it's so contagious, it would spread very quickly. Foreigners in the country are still being evacuated, which could be a big problem not showing signs of the disease and infecting other people when they arrive in their home country. But the Chinese city of Wuhan has bigger problems right now. With a population of 11 million people, food supplies are running low and hospitals are overflowing. The city has been in lockdown since January 23, 2020. There are thousands of patients waiting for hours, and China is even building 2 new hospitals in the city. The country is now sending in military doctors and medical workers from other provinces to help with the staggering number of people who are sick. Some news reports claim that the hospital staff is treating so many people at the same time that they have begun wearing diapers because they don't have time to use the bathroom. The virus is believed to have originated late last year in the food market in the Chinese city of Wuhan that was illegally selling wildlife. The Huanan seafood wholesale market in the center of the Chinese city was selling live and newly slaughtered animals. Many of those infected first either shopped or worked here. But there is also a video online of a Chinese woman. What do you think will happen next? And is the Wuhan coronavirus actually a biological weapon? Sound off in the comments. But before you do that, click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss a new video. Thanks for watching.